Greetings, and thank you for joining me this afternoon on a presentation from the Black Flame Collective called the Theistic Ascension Challenge. My name is Damiano. I'm one of the hosts of the Into the Black Flame podcast, a podcast which can be found on patreon.com/Into the Black Flame should you want to support myself and my co-host AJ's work. The podcast is a left-hand path, occultism, devilry, ancestral practices, and everything in between type podcast where we speak about all of these topics and everything in between. The Patreon page is now has two tiers to it. The first tier is the Conversationalist, which is a $5 tier, allowing a person access to the Discord server community, which is also the Black Flame Collective community. It also gives access to the old Black Flame Immersion podcast episodes for a lot of people who were asking for that content. And the second tier would be the Sofa File, the attainer or seeker thereof outer knowledge. And that is a $10 platform piece, which allows you to gain access to all of any type of exclusive content beforehand, before it hits YouTube. It also gives you everything else in between, plus access to our new podcast, which is Into the Black Flame. So if you want to support us, again, check it out, patreon.com/Into the Black Flame. And it also goes into supporting the Black Flame Collective as a whole. So what I'm going to do today is a short video. I say short, but we know that's not usually going to happen. But what I'm going to try to do is a short video today. I put out a challenge for the Black Flame Collective to everybody, ancestral practitioners, anybody from neo-paganism, heathenry, Astru, Norse paganism, and everything in between, and also to occult-based left-hand path practitioners, whether they be any type of hyphenated Satanist or a Luciferian or any other variant thereof, so long as a person is theistic, because as what we were speaking about in our mission statements video, or what the Black Flame Collective is all about, is bringing theism back to the forefront, removing and eradicating all facets of Abrahamic thought inside of our personal practices, of course, not relying on anything Abrahamic to handle our own problems or our own issues or having to cope with things, moving forward in our own practices and path working without that, segregating it completely, but also removing the atheistic gold packaged forefront that has taken a very hard stranglehold on many of our practices and lives when they speak for us. And a lot of the types of titles that people tend to use, specifically people who consider themselves as Satanists, it's getting a bit old, has been old, and it's just plain old for a long period of time, having people who are atheists be the forefront of a movement and misrepresenting everybody else in between. So the Black Flame Collective is here to facilitate a in-between of that, where we can establish, again, a community of people. I use, again, a community loosely, a group of like-minded people who are in a collective format, who have resources from within, whether it be music, authors, networking pathways, everything else like that, and also just to be able to talk to each other. But also the goal, again, is to remove and eradicate the Abrahamic parasitism from all of our lives, and also the atheistic front. So, with that being said, I put forth a challenge towards everybody to put out a video on YouTube explaining your position, why it is that you are a theist, why did you not stop at atheism, were you ever an atheist, what was your upbringing, what pushed you into the direction that you are now with your spirituality, why is it that you are vehemently against atheism, and why is it that you do not appreciate people who are reverse Christian or who use reverse Christianity as an excuse to be imbeciles in their practices and just can't put the Bible down? What are your experiences with that? And that was the challenge. And thus far, we've had a few people who have done this challenge, a few people from within, already within the Black Flame Collective, and people from the outside who are slowly trickling in. So the hashtag that we want to use is Theistic Ascension BFC. So hashtag Theistic Ascension BFC, which is the locator for all of us to be able to find, one, each other's videos, and two, so that I'm able to compile these or to put these into the website that is currently about to be launched. I'm working on it, and it's becoming very time consuming because there's a lot that goes into it. So again, hashtag Theistic Ascension BFC. So with that being said, since I was the person to push forward the challenge, I have been asked to do the challenge myself. A lot of people on Into the Black Flame and throughout the years with Black Flame Immersion podcast, they've heard quite a bit about who I am as a person, my own personal gnosis, how I've come to understand what I believe. But it's never been in a compilation video or a one compilation into a single video like this. AJ also is going to be completing the challenge, and we'll see how that one goes. So, without further ado, I will engage in my own challenge. These are difficult videos to do, which is why the challenge is in place. One, to facilitate a theistic front on social media platforms, with a show of force from people of all across ancestral communities, as well as occult-based or left-hand path communities. A show of force putting forth that there are people out here who are spiritual and who have a theistic outlook and move towards a theistic ascension point, and do not subscribe to reverse Christianity or subscribe to the asinine atheism that has taken a stranglehold over everybody. So the videos are difficult. They're proving to be difficult for people to do because you don't want to have to talk about yourself. It seems it's not very humble per se. It seems in some cases you might sound like an elitist, which is what I'm probably going to start to sound like in a few seconds. But it's warranted. It's warranted to speak about yourself, because the only way that people are going to find out that we exist and that we aren't some type of Christian heretics or we are some kind of psychotic group of devil worshippers like the Christians would say we are, is to merely just have a conversation. And to whoever watches this and to whoever listens and moves forward with their own part of the challenge, that's what matters. And eventually it'll hopefully and eventually will reach to a level to where it is hitting all corners of the globe. And we can, again, by force, remove these other aspects out of the way. That is Black Flame Collective. So, my name is Damiano, and I am, let me be like a lady, I'm in my 40s. I have been what I would consider now, where I'm at in my life, I have been a occult or left-hand path practitioner for over 20 years. I was dabbling in occult type things going on almost 30 years. So from when I was about 13 years old, things started to get a little bit, I started to question a lot of things when I was around 13. Short back history, I came up on an island in the middle of the ocean in the Florida Keys, where the only things to do were to get high or get drunk or be basically a degenerate. If you didn't have money and you didn't have a penchant for wanting to do water sports, not those kind of water sports, but maybe down there too, fishing and things as such, you just didn't fit in. It wasn't a place for you. And the bearer of me, I hate to say my mother, but the woman who excreted me from her loins, she thought it was a good idea to take a younger person, or to have a child in a place where there was absolutely nothing. Nothing to do, no culture really, nothing like that. So, needless to say, my childhood was kind of bent and broken in the sense of just already having to be very introspective. Because I wasn't interested I was never interested in drugs. I was never interested in drinking. I didn't have any friends because I was into the metals. Dressed like a freak. Back in the '90s, it was trench coats and fishnets with face painted up like the Crow. I was that guy, and nobody really wanted it. And when you're on a small island like that, everybody knows who you are anyways, because most of the people grew up with you. So when you take a harsh turn off of Sandy Beach Lane and you go to Crazy Town, and the way that you look and how you portray yourself, then everybody they're just not want everything to do with you, and you become the witch. So I was the witch of the of the Florida Keys. This wasn't conducive towards a good upbringing. I obviously can't shift all the blame into the mother figure here for deciding to move down there for her own reasons, but she's another story. She's a big catalyst for me being where I am today as far as all of the bad things, not the good things, like how you would think a mother would be, how they should care about you and how they should hug you and tell you that, you are the best thing for them and stuff. All the pipe dream stuff that you want to have happen when you're a kid, what you want to hear from your mother. But in all reality, a lot of us don't hear that. So I didn't catch that. Didn't get that at all. It was quite the opposite. Basically just downloading all of their shit into me. So grew up on a tiny island, didn't ever fit in there, started off having friends, but then very quickly in my early teens started switching over to more of the alternative type ideas. I was forced to go to a Christian school, which was the only private school on the island. And again, the mother figure thought that was a good idea. So from pre-K to about 7th grade, with a couple of splits in between going to public school, I was forced to go to a Christian school. And in going to that Christian school, I had a lot of questions. And in having a lot of those questions, I was shunned. And I had a paddle taken to my bare ass. And everything else in between there was no questioning anything. I couldn't question anything. And if I did question anything, I was met with a scathing assault, whether it be being belittled by teachers or peers, or being told to remain silent, much like how the Bible would tell you to shut the fuck up and do not question, quote, God. So, just trying to give a little bit of a backstory here so you know where I'm going in the forefront. So we got a fucked up childhood. Father, original dad, he divorced old mom when I was 5 years old because she was fucking another guy. Caught her fucking another guy at a hotel. And the guy that she was fucking at the hotel, she married him when I was 5.5. And I didn't wait long. And then from 5.5 till about 13, this guy was Captain Abuser, just mental and physical abuse on a daily basis. And that old great mom, who was just supposed to be an awesome person, she believed everything that he had to say. I guess he had a big dick or whatever. That's what she was going for. So me in the background, I was just taking the hammer from everything that they could download and give to me. And then eventually at 13, there's around the age there, of course, at 13 was when when old mom there divorced him. And I really started going down in the spiral on the search for spirituality, because I started to realize that the introspective emotion that I was having, as in the constant having to be in my own head. Can any of you relate to that? Just being a person who is into the things that I'm into now. take music out of the picture and stuff like that, but just being into alternative type ideas, being into abstract philosophies, being into world religions as a whole, spanning back all the way to Mesopotamia at a young age. I was very into my own mind. I wasn't very extroverted, which is sad in the sense that I was when I started out, but I was pushed into a position of having to be introspective. I had to be inside my own head because I wasn't able to fashion an atmosphere for myself around these people that would have been okay for me to manage what I was feeling. And what I was feeling at the time was a spiritual pull. However, I was too young to really understand what that meant at the time. And that became very taxing and it became very difficult. Coupled with all the abuse type stuff and the mother figure who just couldn't stop with the getting married thing and the going to the Christian school and getting picked on, getting beat up, dealing with just constant barrage of things going from all directions, constant barrage of abuse, let's call it abuse. Then to put it into the idea that I was also force-fed medication by said mother at a young age because, again, instead of just asking me some questions or saying, hey, he's reacting a certain way because this guy is beating his ass every day because he's got the hiccups or whatever. Instead of saying that, it was, no, we need to cram a bunch of unsanctioned drugs down his throat. Unsanctioned drugs at the time before antidepressants were even out and shit, before SSRIs were even a thing, and they were like MAOI inhibitors and shit. Let's give this, 7-year-old that shit, because fuck it, right? Why not? So of course I developed and had a penchant for obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety disorder and panic attacks, and of course due to all of the trauma and such, the fashionable PTSD. Which again, I'm dealing with all of these things still to this day. So again, hey, thanks, Deb. Go fuck yourself. So let's put all that in the background now. So you got like a basic backstory. So what do you got? You got trauma in the background. A lot of us are born of fire. A lot of us coming into our own practices and the way that we feel and the things that we do, we're born of the fire. We're born of the blade, essentially. Something happened at some point in time that was a catalyst for us to say, I don't want this. I'm now going to move to this. So much like I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that, this had occurred because of my upbringing, because of the childhood, because of all the trauma. So when I was young, I started to realize, as soon as I began to dabble into things and occult-related things, this was a long time ago, so there was no internet, there wasn't anything like that. It was really just attempting to talk to people, which, if you can imagine, on an island in the middle of the ocean, you weren't finding too many people who were into the devil. They were more interested in Jimmy Buffett. Again, it kind of put me into a position where I was then trying to grab at books. Can I find some books? Let me go to the public library over here and see if I can find any interesting books. Again, I crapshoot, really just trying to locate anything. And because I didn't have YouTube, because I didn't have Facebook, because I didn't have some type of social media platform where I could locate resources, which is what Black Flame Collective is trying to accomplish. Because I didn't have resources and I was left to my own devices, I made a lot of mistakes. I engaged in acts unbecoming because I didn't know any better. And trial by fire is something that many of us will have to endure and many of us need to go through to get to where we will inevitably be. So going back to the reason behind how things begin is that there's a push. There's always usually a push. For those of you, and I'm sure there's plenty, for those of you who have not experienced trauma as a child, or have not went through the ringer with parents. Maybe you have great parents. Maybe you have, maybe you always had friends. Maybe you were an A-lister. Maybe you weren't the goth kid. Maybe you were the polo shirt kid, the jocks, the basers, whatever. Maybe you were one of those people. And this doesn't really apply to you. However, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that what can apply and what commonalities that all of us do have is that at some point there was a recognition of spark. And usually in that recognition of spark, there's a catalyst behind it of something occurred, something snapped, something broke. The tree isn't the same shape anymore. We're starting to realize that what we're seeing in reality and that what we're feeling in our reality is essentially bendable. So to give an example, at a younger age, right around the time when all this trauma ceased, around the age of 13, when I started looking at everything I could find at the time, which was Wiccan books, the Gardnerian, some Dianic stuff, early onset, the Thelemic stuff, Satanism, as far as the atheistic Anton LaVey shit. I found all this stuff, and I wanted to try it all. I wanted to do everything I could possibly do. There was no part of me that said, hey, D, let's take a step back and look at, critically think for a second about what we're going to do here. It wasn't like that. There was no critical thinking at the time. It was just, I don't want to be all of that. I don't want to be associated with the Christianity. I could not stand going to the Christian school. I hated my family. I hated all that shit, and I wanted an out. So much like how someone else who would not have gone through those things, who might be very different looking from me or had a different upbringing from me, I'm pretty sure there was still a point in time where you came to that bridge with yourself of like, hey, this needs to stop and this needs to begin. And for a lot of us older people, the resource aspect of being able to see a million different opinions online just wasn't there. There was no online. And being left to your own devices is a good thing in one way now, as I realize that I'm older. But at the time, it was not a good thing. Because all those books that I found and all the things, all the rituals that I looked at, I just did them all. I did everything I could do just to obtain some type to attain knowledge, one, but also to have a result. I wanted results. I didn't want to feel the way that I felt anymore. I didn't want to be subjected to the oppressive thumbs of the Abrahamic parasite. I didn't want to hear about atheism. I didn't want to listen to, at the time it was, Church of Satan was a huge thing back in the 90s, huge thing. Satanic Temple wasn't even around then. But the Church of Satan was huge in the sense that it was a place where they said that you could belong to. It was a place where you could use a title that to a lot of people still to this day means absolutely nothing but the essence of thinking of yourself as the highest being on in the ether, basically. And anything else that you come to terms with and anything else that you want to do with your life is all just fodder, because you're really an atheist. So it's taking the cool side of the life pattern that we have to go through and eventually the death process, and saying none of that really matters because we got to live in the moment. I didn't want to hear that. At the age of 13, I started to experience, and this is always I will say this until the day I die, I had telekinetic and divination type experiences. It was never something that I did on purpose. It was never something that it was never so crazy where I was like a movie, starting matchbooks on fire and stuff like that. Telekinesis is one of those things that is, again, a metaphysical aspect. Nobody's going to admit that this is ever real. There's pretty compelling evidence out there that there have been a few people throughout time who could willfully move things with their mind. However, I noticed when I was younger that during a lot of the times where I was getting my head smashed through a wall or something, I would have experiences, notably two experiences. One, it always happened during anger, very, very angry, extremely pissed off, walked into my room, closed the door, got on the bed and started like punching the bed really hard because of whatever this dickhead that the mother figure was married to did. And I had a yearbook on top of a TV stand, and it was on top of it. It wasn't on a ledge or anything like that. And in the middle of my rage moment, I punched down onto the mattress and I stood up and I was like, just like that. And the book fell off the top of the TV stand. So at the time, it kind of scared me, freaked me out a little bit. I didn't know what it was, but it's something that stuck with me. Second instance, same thing, pissed off, went into the laundry room, closed the door behind me, totally pissed off. A big candle that was sitting up on like a ledge piece. Again, not on the corner of a ledge, big glass candle, boom, comes off the thing and smashes on the floor. So these are the two instances that I remember from when I was younger, two things, and I was probably the angriest I could have ever been when I was younger, and that unharnessed anger, I think, lent itself into a lot of rage patterns when it came to practicing stuff I should not have been practicing at the time. And I say that because sitting down and doing rituals when you're 13 years old, and reading out of a book or looking or getting anything from anybody else that gives you instructions on what to do, taking it from Greek pantheon, Roman, say Wiccan stuff, pagan stuff, Norse things, Satanism, and everything else in between, and just fucking doing it. Just doing it. And some people might say, well, the trial and error is what molds us, and you are correct. Trial and error is what molds us. However, trial and error is also what breaks a lot of us. And in that, luckily I was not broken per se. However, it did take me a long time to come to terms with the things that I had done when I was younger that are now still affecting me today. Especially the allowing yourself as a open person. I'll always stand behind this for many of us. If you are into anything on a theistic level, poly or monotheistic, whatever it is, on left-hand path ideology or philosophy or ancestral practices. Thinking outside the box here. We're not talking about theistic Christians, okay? We're talking about theism on the outside spectrums. Most of these people are, a lot of people like to use the term empathic. They have natural divination abilities. They usually have very intense dreams. A lot of people are predisposed to anxiety disorders or conditions. Some people are just sociopaths. Some people have a openness in general when they are submerged in this type of thought process, whatever it might be across that type of theistic board. So because we are open like that, because I was open like that, the things that I did at the time to obtain or elicit a response, they did allow me to learn trial by fire, essentially. And they had me understand cause and effect on a spiritual level. But coming further down the line to where I am now, it opened up a lot of doorways early on that should not have been opened up. It opened up the doorway to the dead. That should never be opened up, in my opinion. It took me a long time to bar that from my practice, to keep that away from my ritual areas, and to stop the constant cyclical thinking of, or the talking all the time of entities. Because again, once you see something, once they see you, once they hear you, or they understand, now this is any entity, if they understand that you are able to see and hear them, then they want to see and hear you. And they won't shut up. And most of the time, it's benign. It's just a major annoyance, but there is a lot of malignancy in there as well. Not everything that comes through is a good guy. or gal. Yeah, there's a lot of, we just don't know anything about that. So those have left scars in my spirituality through time. And it has pushed me in multiple different directions throughout my practice on how to move forward with scars of the past. So, in saying that, again, so I want to showcase the shift here. You have a younger person. You have somebody who's predisposed to all of these, sometimes mental health type conditions. You have someone who is already intuitive. You have someone who is already empathic. You have someone who's already experiencing divination, as like I said when I was younger. A lot of weird dreams, a lot of unintentional astral projections. I can't get into everything here, obviously, nor do you probably want to hear all that stuff. But just to touch on these things, a lot of stuff was happening from the age of about 6 to 7 years old, and then really capitalized once I hit 13 when I acknowledged that I was going to do something with it. But the beforehand stuff was very scary. It was very frightening as a young person. The imagery that I was seeing in my head, the symbolism that I was seeing in my head, the dreams that I was having, the astral projections, I didn't know what that was. I didn't have Wikipedia. I didn't have Google. I didn't have I had the Encyclopedia Britannica, for fuck's sakes. It was like 100 goddamn books on my shelf. You think I was going to look through that? No. So it was, you have broken. You have a broken person. And again, not all of you were broken. Your experiences may differ. And that's why we're doing these videos. This is me. I want to hear you. But as me, I came into this broken. Should I have, and could I have, been a reverse Christian? Wouldn't it have been easy to do that? Yeah, it would have. It would have been easy to just stop at the Bible like a lot of people do and say, oh, I don't believe this bullshit in this book, but I guess it's a cool story if I turn it around to fit my needs. Like a lot of people do in the satanic community, I could have done that. I never wanted to do that. Did I suffer from Abrahamic parasitism in my practice? Absolutely. I had an inverted crucifix at my altar, not an inverted cross, but an inverted crucifix. I never stuck a Bible at my altar and shit like some people do, but I have burned Bible pages. I have done acts of blasphemy throughout my time, which are definitely things needed. Check out the constructive blasphemy video. But I never wanted to establish my practice around the opposition of another. I didn't want Christianity to win. I felt I'm Sicilian, so I come from a family who were very harsh Roman Catholics. I wasn't brought up that way. But I was still forced to go to a Christian school. I needed to complete certain actions to get that away from me. But I didn't want it to remain a factor in my life. It took me a while to realize that. It did. It took me a while to realize that. It bothers me to my core when I see people who are stuck in that loop. And that's why we're doing what we're doing here, is to break that loop. So the broken part is what brought me to the mending phases, as I would call them. I started to fashion out of my experiences what it exactly it is that I've come to understand. What is it that I believe? What can I make sense of for myself? I've been the theistic Satanist. I've been the traditional Satanist. I've been the theistic Luciferian. I've been every title. I've been a diabolist. We know how that one went, right? I've been every title that I could think of to try to substantiate myself to me. What is it that you believe, Dom? Like what is it? Like, you don't need to tell other people. How many people do you really meet on a daily basis who are going to say, who are you and what is it that you believe? And tell me what ism you are so I can make sense of that. That doesn't happen. Depending on, I guess, where you're at. I've been all over the country. I've lived in many different phases of my life, and I've lived in pretty heightened cultural areas like New York City and stuff, and Portland, Oregon, and nobody has ever come over to me and said, "Hey, you look like you're not a Christian. So can you please explain to me what it is that you are, or what it is that you do? Could you talk to me about that?" Never had that. It usually comes up in some type of educational format, or when things get heated in a conversation that I'm in or around. I put my 2 cents in, and then somebody has questions. That's usually what occurs. But I had to apply a name to myself, and that's where all these grabbing at straws for different types of isms came in. So I've been through all that, and none of that stuff ever fit for me. I could never be a Satanist. I can never feel right as a Satanist, because as inclusive as these people want you to think that they are, number one, the forefront and the be-all end-all of Satanism, no matter what anybody says, are these atheist, glorified, gold-packaged people, humanists, who are usually nowadays or just synonymous with left-wing, hardcore political activists, who spend most of their time doing that, most of their time telling you what they aren't and not telling you what they are. That never worked for me. The LaVeyan shit never worked for me. I read the Satanic Bible and I was like, wow, yeah, this is great. So this is exactly what the Bible says not to do. You're just telling people it's cool to be a human being. Great, congratulations. So replacing one dogmatic idea with another dogmatic idea, prefacing it with that we don't have any dogma. Great, more hypocrisy for my brain and not fucking deal with. Again, would never work with the Satanic Temple or anything like that. If you feel like you have to be an activist and put politics into your religion, you're no different than a Christian to me who is pushing politics into their religion, using Jesus as a sword to promote their idiocy. It's no different. And I don't care how noble your causes are or what it is that you think that you're doing. If you're not strong enough to stand on your own 2 feet without using, the devil or Jesus behind you to do it, then you're a weakling. I'm sorry. None of that stuff could ever work for me. So I had to start looking deeper. So, you get into theistic Satanism and Luciferianism. These people are like, oh, well, we're the bee's knees because we're actually theists. But you find out very quickly that the theism that you find inside of the theistic Satanism currents is very much so just reverse Christianity. So it never worked for me. I didn't want to be an inverse Christian. I don't want to say the Lord's Prayer backwards. I have absolutely no interest in having Jesus at my altar, whether he's upright or he's upside down. I don't want that. I don't want to listen to the constant yammering of Satan and the demons, Satan and the demons, Satan and the demons. I'm tired of hearing that shit, and I've always been tired of hearing that shit. It was never me. It was never me, because all it sounded like was disgruntled Walmart employees, but for the devil. Like, we can't stand it. We can't stand the Bible. We hate the Bible, so what are we going to do? We're going to worship Satan. We're going to worship Satan. Like, that's all I see. Is picket, like it's like a union picket line. We're not working. That's all the theistic Satanism shit is to me. That's all the traditional, whatever ism it is, whatever hyphenated aspects you want to put in there. And I fell prey to it for a while when I was younger. And again, I didn't fit in because I wouldn't conform to people's ideas of what that was. And I'm not a Christian, and I couldn't continue to use Christian ideology in my practice. The moment that you tell a group of theistic Satanists that you are a theistic Satanist, they say, oh, yay. But the moment you're like, I'm never going to do a black mass because that's idiotic, then they're like, oh, well, you're not a real Satanist then. You don't get it. Only real Satanists get it. So you can imagine how this makes people feel. The confusion, the pushing people in a million different directions. Witchcraft and paganism in general never had an appeal to me. Because again, Wicca being the biggest perpetrator of essentially still being a right-hand path belief structure, it's almost as if it's Christianity still. This whole don't harm anybody, the love and light shit and everything like that. I never had an interest in that. I don't want to walk around shooting people in the face or anything like that. I have no interest in that. I am essentially a law-abiding person. I'm a blue-collar worker. I pay my fucking taxes, even though it doesn't mean a goddamn thing. I do all the right things that I'm supposed to do, and I don't need a goddamn book or a group of assholes or yahoos to tell me that I need to do it. I get it. You know, don't kill people, don't hurt women, be nice, you know, whatever your sex is, great, good for you, whoever you want to put your dick in or you want dick, whatever you got to do it. I don't care, and I don't want it in my spirituality conversations. So, this takes out a huge swath of people that you can even find common ground with. Maybe you could talk to somebody. But as soon as it gets into like a smidge into the actual practice and you start to hear all this other shit that comes along with everything else that you left behind, then you have a problem. So, I was at an impasse. I had to establish myself as I was never going to have a big group of friends. I was never, and I still to this day I keep zero friends. I have acquaintances through the podcast. I have people who I would consider my friends through the podcast, yes. But in my real life, in my daily life and stuff like that, I don't talk to anybody. Everything is a facade. Everything is a front to just chameleon my way through the next moment, the next hour, to get to the end of the day so I can be alone. That's all there is to it. And that's shitty. It's shitty, and it's a very jaded way of thinking. But can you blame me? Can you blame me? Do you feel that way? Do you feel that way too? I have a feeling that a lot of you feel that way. You have nobody to talk to. Nobody. You have nothing in common with people. And let's say black metal music or whatever can only get you so far with a person until they say something on a spiritual level that makes you want to puke in your soup. So here's where I am today. Is you got all this childhood shit. You got all this almost 30 years of just compilation of a million different types of thought. Just everybody in your ear. Do it this way. Do it that way. Do it this way. Do it that way. Never saying, maybe do it your own way. Never that. Always do it my way. You do it my way. This way for this. You say this. You do that. You do this. And never care for me. Never care for where I was, where I came from, how I was brought up, my childhood, what I was predisposed to, if I had any mental health issues. Never any of that. Just do it. Right? The fucking Nike shit. Just do it. Just jump into it. Call the devil. Call him on the hotline. I call him every night. Right? It's this, it's that mentality that gets people into trouble. And I didn't want that. So here's what happens when you're alone. What happens when you're alone is you start to formulate gnosis. And in your individual gnosis, as in not the mirrored gnosis of another person hanging around your neck for eternity because you cannot see past the idea of what someone else is telling you. I understand, and I fell trapped to the idea of not having a template. Paganism and stuff like that, it always was appealing to me in the sense of they had a pantheon of gods and goddesses. There was something there. And it was predating the Abrahamic stranglehold, even though the Abrahamic parasitism morphed all of that, destroyed all of that, eradicated all of that, and turned it up on its head, so we barely know what the hell any of it really was anyways from historical value. But it appealed to me in the sense that it was something that you could hold on to and that you had train tracks on. Like, there were ways to go. There was something to get, like there was a finite way to do something. That's what was appealing. In Satanism and such, traditions and all this stuff, there's no train tracks. It's a train graveyard, like just railroad tracks every which fucking way, and you go 2 feet over here and then you're going another way, and then you go 2 feet over here and you're going another way. There's no templates. There's just a bunch of people trying to make sense of the fucking confusion in their head, and they are sharing with you their knowledge. But instead of collectively discussing it and shooting off of each other their ideas and how they came to things. They are demanding your time and your money, and they want you to do what it is that they're telling you to do, because then they can maintain that control aspect. Just like Christianity, if you think for yourself, they're not interested. They're not interested in you, and then they ostracize you. The satanic communities are no different. If you don't follow the way that they think, you're met with, well, I guess you're just not true enough, or you're not cult enough, or you're just not cool enough, or you just don't get it. And that mentality is not me. Here's where Black Flame Immersion, Black Flame Collective, and Into the Black Flame come in. Black Flame Immersion was created to showcase Gnosis from an objective standpoint. I utilized a podcast format to not only assist myself in furthering my Gnosis and also growing with the listeners who listened by talking to them and understanding that there was a need for the collective. But also, again, to show people that you can make up your mind for yourself. And that's exactly what I had to do. I had to make up my mind for myself. So I don't usually do this, but I'll give a little bit of insight here. There's been a few people who have directly asked me over the years, Damiano, what is it that you believe? What are you? You say that you're not a Satanist. You say that you worship a deity named Lucifer. Can you please explain how you reconcile that without saying that you are of any type of Abrahamic thought? Okay, so if you haven't found out thus far in this video, I'm all over the place with everything. I don't do these scripted, and this is really just shooting from the hip, and that's the point, is to show vulnerability. I don't want to do this scripted. If you have to, obviously do yours scripted. If that's going to make you do it, even better. But I want to show the truest, and most humble and vulnerable form of me as possible, which is kind of tripping over myself, talking about me. I don't like talking about me. But here's the answer to that question for people who may not understand. What I've ascertained throughout my life, in all of that shit that we just talked about, is that I don't understand a goddamn thing. And I'm not meant to understand a fucking thing. I've come to realize that I'm a human being, obviously, right? Maybe I'm not so human to other people. But I'm a human, which means that I know one of two things. Is that I was born and I'm going to die. I got it. That's what I got. And in understanding the birth and mortality idea, understanding that there is a death process that has to occur, I've come to understand that also. I've come to realize that I don't know what's going to occur when I'm dead. I know what I see in my surroundings of other dead things, other dead people that I've had encounters with. I know what that is. I know what that feels like. And I don't want that. I don't want that at all. I had to, through pain, through fire, through blade, through blood, I had to come to the idea that what I was feeling when I was younger was the pull of a deity. And for a short while before the age of reason, I thought that was God, Jehovah. And then I realized very quickly that the more I tried to understand or tried to get closer to the idea of that being Jehovah, the more intensely ill I got. The more sick I got, the more obstructed I got in how I could view things. And that became very crazy to me. It was even at a young age, I didn't like that. I didn't want that. So I had to start reconciling, more so in my teens, what is it that I'm feeling? Who is this? if it's not Jehovah, is it the devil? Because you still, at a younger age, you still got that in your head. Even people who are atheists, they're still like, the devil? Is it the devil? Is it the little pitchfork horn guy down on the earth who's going to punish me for not obeying Jesus, right? You still have that in the back of your head, especially at a young age. And I said, no, it's not that. So then I grabbed onto the idea of Lucifer. Because Lucifer in the biblical stories, again, still looking at the Bible at a younger age, Lucifer in the biblical stories was he was the most beautiful angel. The story's nice, right? The Most High. His right-hand man, And he was just this gorgeous angel. So right away you're like, oh, And then what happens? Well, in the Bible, old Jehovah creates man and woman and gives them free will. Right? Or the idea of free will. Not really free will. It's kind of like rights. They're an illusion. You don't really have rights. But in that, Lucifer being created as a slave to this malevolent deity, said, fuck that. I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to be, you can't give them free will and not give me free will. I'm not born to serve anybody, non-servium. So, I'm out. And then he gets kicked out, and then another third of the troop with him are like, okay, cool. We're going to go with you too, because fuck this guy, right? And then you hear that story when you're younger, and you're like, okay, well, I can relate to this guy. I don't want a weird father figure who tells me I can, do all this, but don't do this, but do it this way, but don't do it that way. And if you do it this way, you're going to burn forever. But I love you. It's really weird. And again, for me, these Christians who had an admiration for this type of thing have Stockholm syndrome. But you can understand how people get stuck there. I did not want to get stuck there. I didn't want to get stuck on the idea that Lucifer was a fallen angel. But I took the name. I took the name because in Latin, its connotation was very pretty. It had a light bearer, the idea of a knowledge bearer, the fire, the torch of knowledge. I took the name from a linguistic standpoint. And I said, I don't believe in the biblical story, but I like that name. So I'm going to use it. So I started to apply this name to this deity. And still to this day, Lucifer is the linguistic choice that I have for the deity that I'm connected to on a purely linguistic level. Because as a human, I need names, right? We need names. I'm Damiano, you're Jill, you're John, you're Joey, whatever. That's how you meet people. Hey, how you doing? Like, you don't want to hear that. You got to hear I'm so-and-so. It's a connectivity port. And Lucifer was a connectivity port for me. And in my years of understanding, Lucifer is outside of the scope of human consciousness. I don't believe that this deity is a creation of anything. I don't believe that this deity is something that I could even understand on a creationist standpoint. I can't fathom that in my brain. I only have so much brain power. And in that brain power that I do have, I have to try to I have to make sense out of things from either a scientific standpoint or a metaphysical standpoint, and both of those fall short in the sense of understanding otherworldly things. I can only speculate, I can only hypothesize, and I can only theorize what it is that I think is occurring. Anybody who tells you otherwise is delusional. We don't have a direct line to these things. We are human beings. We're not gods, in my opinion. Couldn't be a living God either. That just never, didn't want to work. That didn't work for me. Maybe I'm a little too humble for that. And theistic thought, again, I just couldn't do that. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But how did we get here in my thought process? In my thought process, I'm not an evolutionist. I'm not. Big surprise, right? Yeah, no, maybe not. I believe in evolution from a standpoint of, yes, certain animals have evolved. Certain microbes have evolved. Certain viruses have evolved. things have evolved. But us as humans, I don't believe that we came from monkeys. The Darwinistic explanation of this is actually really shitty, especially if you're on the racial side of things. Horrible towards minorities, what Darwin thought about evolution. And I just don't believe that I was, as South Park would have said so eloquently, a monkey fish frog that crawled out of the water and all of a sudden, boom, here I am. I just don't buy that story. And guess what? That's my prerogative, right? It's an opinion. Science is not infallible. Science is picking up where religion leaves off in the sense of trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. And again, it looks good on paper because it's a ton of equations. It's a shit ton of math that I would have totally failed. I get it, but I don't have to buy it. I am a creationist. I believe that I was created. I will not condescend to think that I understand how the creation process happened. However, in my personal gnosis, I have a few beliefs in how it occurred in the sense of the deity that I'm aligned with. Lucifer, right? This deity is not my creation point. This deity is or could be an amalgamation of a million different deities that have come down the line that we don't even know about. Maybe from parallel universes, maybe from different dimensions. Who knows? Who knows? Let's get quantum on it. Really. I mean, we're on that level. But we just don't know. But this isn't a creation deity to me. Is it a liberating deity? No, it's not a liberating deity. It's simply a deity. I am by default in opposition to the Abrahamic parasite. But again, my practice and the deity that I'm aligned with are not based around that opposition. So while I have a feeling of liberty and freedom in this deity, they are not a liberation symbol to me. They are not the adversary. They are not the opposer or the accuser or everything else that the atheist groups want to say. It means so much to them to try to make sense of their meaningless now lives because they think they're just going to be worm food. I don't need that. I'm going somewhere. Okay? So Lucifer not being the creation deity, this means this is a deity that I align myself with, that I work with on a personal level, that I don't look at and demand things from, that I don't grovel on my knees for and say, please, please help me with my math test. Please help me win the lottery. Please help me be a better person. None of that occurs to me because getting on my knees and doing that type of thing left when I left the Christian ideology. The need to make sense of your life through groveling at the knees or groveling on your knees at the idea of an all-powerful being who's going to just make it all go away because of lack of self-accountability. And that's I needed more strength than that. So Lucifer didn't create me, but I work through this deity to work on myself. This deity does not show up to me. This deity does not manifest to me because I firmly believe that I could not handle the manifestation. I also think that the idea of manifestation is, again, a human construct. Well, if there is an otherworldly entity out there, they should be able to manifest into a form that I should be able to understand and see. More ceremonial magic garbage. More French political Christianized occultist Solomonic bullshit. I don't buy it. Never happened. So to all the happy people out there having a fucking filet mignon and some Perrier with Satan every night, congratulations. I don't know. Okay? But for me, no manifestations. Ethereal manifestation. My dreams are altered. My ritual space is altered. When I do a ceremony or I do something and I utilize this deity within me, and through that deity, I feel something. I feel the manifestation that is unexplainable. That's how I utilize this deity. In the creation aspect of things, I believe that there was another deity. And much like how people would, I've been accused of being a Gnostic for this, but I utilize the term the demiurge, simply because to me it means a malevolent deity, a malevolent creation type deity. And for me, in this demiurge aspect, I believe that there was a deity. And I believe that people have commingled this throughout time with the sense of, let's say, Jehovah, Hashem, Allah, especially in the Abrahamic beliefs of this deity that is horrible that people write about. Horrible. Horrible. Killing everybody who doesn't want to think like, who doesn't want to obey, killing women and children, demanding sacrifices, everything else in between. Basically everything we get accused of, right? I believe that there was a deity as such. This demiurge, to me, was our creation point. And I think that we were just really a circus type of, well, what's the word? Fuck. I think that we were a like a trial. Like we had a deity out there who said, I can make something. I can make people. I can make a being. Right? And then we were made. Maybe we were made alongside the animals. Maybe there was a whole bunch of dinosaurs and shit. And, there's so many things you could theorize about this because nobody really knows. Science comes in and says, well, there was the Pleistocene, there was the Jurassic, there was the Triassic. Great. And the world's billions of years old and all this stuff. We can go back, because by looking at carbon samples, we can date all this shit. Great. But nobody was around then. And using math equations and everything else is sciencing the shit out of it. Awesome. But personally, in my beliefs, while that stuff is valid, there's other stuff that was at play. So I think that we were created, and we were left. We were a accident of creation. Like, yeah, fuck it. We'll make a couple of people here and there. I didn't know that, we'll get them to breed a little bit, see what happens. And then they got bored and then they left. Obviously, that's a very, very interesting. I'm using a very light line there to describe it. But that's why I personally view life as a curse. Because as many of you know, and many of you have firsthand experience with, we're born to die. Born to die. The moment you're born, you're starting to die. And some people die sooner than later. And a lot of people want to hold on to the idea that they're going to be with their family members when they're dead and that all this other shit's going to happen. And I never put stock into that. Never. It's a cute idea. It may give people some type of peace of mind, but for me, it made me sick. And I always thought to myself, if I had to go somewhere when I died, and it was where this Jehovah person was from this Bible everybody wants to shove down your throat, or this Jesus fella, right, from the New Testament, I was not interested at all. I didn't want to be around his followers. I didn't want to be around his people. And I've said this until the day I die to Christians who want to try to prove their point of, what if you're wrong and you're going to burn in hell? Well, if that means I don't have to be near you and I don't have to be near your God, then I will burn for eternity, please. I don't care how much suffering there is. I don't care as long as I don't have to see your goddamn face or listen to your bullshit whining rhetoric. I'll burn forever, but light me on fire now. So as you can see, I don't really have a light approach to things. But heading back to that, so I do have a creationist idea of things. I was created. I believe that you were created. But we were left in our suffering of the idea of how can we make sense of things. And some of us, we have this flame inside of us, this black flame, and some of us accept that flame. Some of us look at it directly in it, and we say, I'm going to grab a hold of you and I'm going to do whatever it is that I can do to make sure that when I die, I have the most gnosis, I have the most knowledge that I can have. That way I can try to make sense or try to move in death to where I need to be. And that's how I view things. So I view, again, created, a creation point. I won't condescend to say I know exactly every detail on that. It's completely and totally subjective. I've met a few people who share a similar belief to me. There are a lot of Luciferians who have that type of belief on the demiurge. Again, there are some Gnostics who have that type of belief, obviously a bit different on that level. Some theistic Satanists and everything else. The thing is that we can find commonalities across the board with theism, which is what Black Flame Collective is doing, Theistic Ascension. We can find our commonalities in theism, and I can talk to you about this, and you can talk to me about how you think, and we will share the commonality of theistic thought. But I cannot have this conversation with an atheist who is also calling themselves a Satanist, who calls themselves God but doesn't believe in a God, but doesn't want dogma, but follows dogma. You see where we're going with this. So those are my beliefs in a nutshell. I believe that the deity that I work with is a very, very personal thing. It doesn't need to be shared with anybody else. And if someone feels Lucifer in the same way that I feel Lucifer, great. If someone uses Lucifer from an etymological standpoint or in a linguistic standpoint to connect to a deity, great. But guess what? If you don't have a name for a deity, that's awesome too. Names are human. Names are a human construct. And one of the things that I did early on set was I trapped myself in the idea of using names like Lucifer. So now until I'm blue in the face, I have to explain to people, yes, the deity that I align with is Lucifer, but it is not Christian. It is not coming from the Bible. Oh, but Lucifer's from the Bible. Yes, I understand that the terminology was utilized in the Bible and he's Mr. Bad Guy. So again, you kind of have to pick up the pieces, but how many times are people coming up to me and talking to me about this? Usually comes up in fleeting conversations, in abstract comments, or in forums where there are other people speaking about things as such. So I have my views are my own. I came to understand my views because I was always on fire. And in that fire and in that flame, you are either you either own the night or you retreat with fright. You can't have both. And I get it. It's safe to sit back on your haunches and wear the stuff, have the tattoos, and just say that you don't believe in shit, but you're doing all this to scare people. Or you're doing it to be empowered. As much as I hate those people, I understand that. But what I won't accept, and what I won't understand from anybody, and what I never accepted from me, is the point in time where you feel the dark, and you say to yourself, this is it. There's nothing else that I can do. There's nothing else that I need to know. I don't need to learn anything else. I can't accept that. And in not accepting that from me, that removed the Abrahamic infiltrate. Because in needing more and wanting more, that removes Christianity and it removes the Abrahamic infiltrate. Because by accepting in yourself that you want more, that learning doesn't stop, that education and personal growth doesn't stop at the end of your pentagram necklace, you by default remove these things. Obviously, atheism was never a thing for me. AJ will obviously talk about her ideas on atheism. She was atheistic. But I don't have any, I don't have anything with that. I can't explain anything on an atheistic level. I've never felt like there was nothing. I still suffer to this day with a lot of the things from the past. I deal with anxieties and depressions and OCD and everything. I deal with a lot of health-related type anxieties as well. And I have connectivity issues still to this day because of the choices that I made when I was younger. And that's not a bad thing because it keeps me frosty. It reminds me that I'm still alive. It reminds me that I have a job to do. It reminds me that no matter how many people push in that, trying to push towards this exit that's not really there, I already left the room. I'm not reliant on people. I don't rely on those people to tell me when to jump or when to look. I have to rely on me. The accountability factor with me is huge, and I am completely and totally militant about everything that I do. I do not drink. I do not do drugs. I do not smoke. I do nothing that puts myself at jeopardy in this life. One, because I don't want to be what people think I should be, which is a fucking metalhead loser in my mother's basement, smoking and drinking and fucking doing drugs all day or whatever. I never wanted to be that person. And two, because if everybody else in the world has got their hands around my throat 24/7 and is choking me the fuck out, why would I do it to myself too? Why? I'm better than that, and you're better than that. And that's where I stand. That's why Black Flame Immersion Podcast was a thing. That's why this Black Flame Collective is a thing. And that's why Into the Black Flame is moving. If I would have had resources, if I would have seen this video, it may have not have stopped me from making mistakes, but it may have shown me that there are other things in the world. There are other people that I can connect with that don't keep me down, that they pull me up. And that's what we're here for. It took me a long time to be okay with being where I am now. I'm not better than anybody else. I don't hold myself on a pedestal over anybody else, even though people will suggest that, because I'm strong enough to talk about these things, because I'm strong enough to tell other people that you don't have to buy your books and shit. Like, you don't have to. So people will find ways to hate you if you're real. Everybody wants to be stroked in this community, just kind of like Christianity. It needs to be safe as humanly possible. And those outliers, those people on the outside of the boxes, those people who don't care about boxes, those people who keep the politics and the other crap out of their beliefs, those are the people who find their way to us. Those are the people who we want to talk to. Those are the people who are natural resources for the remainder of us out here struggling through this curse of life. And in our imminent expiration, if we can establish just a few connections before we have to go, and not change our practice based around somebody else's ideas and thoughts, but be able to talk about it critically, friendly, and brainstorm on things, that would have been priceless to me when I was younger. I won't regret what I went through. You should never regret what you're going to have to go through. But that doesn't mean that bad choices are a good thing. So, did I cover everything? It's a short video, right? Hour and 15 minutes. But these don't have a time limit. How many times do you put on something that says, listen to these 25 satanic facts, or listen to the Satanic Temple talk about something, or listen to the Christians tell you how shitty Satanists are for 2 hours on end with their bullshit. You can talk for 5 minutes. You can talk for 2 hours. I'll listen. Everybody else will listen. We want to hear what you have to say. That's the point. Is if you're still here listening right now, you're still watching this, and you're saying, you know, shit, I got a lot in common with this guy. I can relate to this guy. You belong in the Black Flame Collective. If you shut this off 5 minutes in and said, wow, what an egotistical prick, talking about himself and his religious beliefs like anybody cares, they self-weeded themselves out. Like, this is set up to self-weed people out. If you're still here, you understand what I mean. So, please, if you have any questions, myself, AJ, we're always willing to talk to people about everything. This by no means was a comprehensive coverage point of me, but it touched on a little bit of things as to why I came to where I am from now. how I got here. What I don't like to see, I don't like the atheism, I don't like the Christianity, I don't like all this stuff infiltrating all of us. I don't want to see it used as a crutch. I don't want someone struggling with their practice because they got 20 other influencers out there telling them to hold on to the Bible. It's unneeded. There's another way. And we're never going to win. We're never going to win the war. Ever. But if we remove ourselves from the war and we work with each other, then no matter what we are, no matter what we go through, no matter how old or how young you are, these experiences like I shared here today, and the experiences like you will share hopefully as well, are things that we can work with each other together to continue the removal of that outside source. So we can learn to rely on each other, not change each other, not necessarily work together ritualistically, but to understand that we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And teamwork is always a good thing. And it doesn't mean that you have to be best buddies. You don't have to break bread with people. But you got to at least be able to get along. So I hope this video showed you that there are some things maybe you have in common with me. There are some things that you can relate to with me. And I hope this prompts a conversation. So again, if you are going to do this challenge, which I want you to do, hashtag Theistic Ascension BFC. Send myself an email or AJ an email at intotheblackflame@gmail.com. Tell us your story. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us what you're going to put the video out as. If you feel uncomfortable doing the video and you want to do audio, put a candle up in the background and put it on YouTube with the candle and just say what you feel. You don't have to be seen. A lot of you might not be able to be seen because of work issues, and that is disgusting. That we live in a world like that where you can't talk about your religious spectrum because guess what? Your Christian boss is going to fire you, right? So do an audio version of it. Put a voice changer on there if you have to, if you feel bad, but just do it. And let me know. Let me know if you want to support the Black Flame Collective and wish to be supported by the Black Flame Collective. We have cool shirts. We got 3 designs that show support with your state on it, your country or whatever on the back like that, showing that you are working through Theistic Ascension and you do support the motion within. Patreon.com/Into the Black Flame. Again, if you want to support the content, all of that goes back into the collective, as well as being able to hear the new podcast and everything else in between. I thank you for taking the time out today, an hour and 20 minutes of your time to watch this. And I know there was a bit of rambling and I got off topic a little bit, but I hope that this helps some of you and gives you maybe gives you a little bit of a nudge to do this yourself. But I hope it showcases that, at the end of the day, I'm a human being, and I'm gonna die. And that's morbid to say, and it's morbid to talk about, but it's reality. And we have to keep things logical, and we have to keep things seated in reality. So if you're going to die and I'm going to die, then let's at least be friendly with each other about it on a theistic level, right? Let's work off of our advantages, work off of what we've learned. And that's the best that we can do, right? Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.